to my surprise, a great game to discuss after that Ravens-Browns game Monday night for the ages. It raises the bar. And then you see the next game on the schedule is Chargers-Raiders, and the bar lowers. But they delivered, even though it was a game without a ton of consequences. The Raiders were playing for something. The Chargers weren't, and the Chargers ended up playing like the team that was playing for something. The 30-27 overtime victory. We'll break that down over the remainder of this segment, Big Cat. But I tell you what, my big takeaway, more than anything else, was that Marcus Mariota really showed up well, played well. It's a shame it didn't work out for the Raiders. Not in the sarcastic, that's a shame way. It is a shame because once Derek Carr pulled up with the groin injury and it was obvious he wasn't going to be back, anybody that's ever pulled a groin, a hamstring like that, it doesn't immediately go away. It's not something you can go back and get an IV for like Lamar Jackson on Monday night. You're done. It's over. Mariota gets thrust into action, and he looked as good as he ever has.
Yeah, he did look fantastic. You're absolutely right. That is the biggest takeaway, that Mariota should get a shot at a starting job going into next year just based on this game alone and coming in a pinch and looking good. But outside of Mariota, I know you want to talk about it, Mike. I know you want to talk about how bad the coaching was. I know you want to talk about Anthony Lynn, but before we talk about Anthony Lynn, I know you really want to talk about the fact that in the last 6 years, John Gruden is now 40-61 as a head coach. No coach would ever survive that. I don't understand what's going on. This is the second year in a row where the Raiders have collapsed down the stretch. Year one was a total rebuild, so 4 wins, that's fine. You can excuse that. Year two, looked like they were building something. Year three, they have that momentum. I've said this on pretty much every show I've done. I've never seen a team basically win a Super Bowl by losing a Sunday night football game. And the Raiders lost that game to the Chiefs, what it was, a month ago, and they basically, the whole world said, watch out for the Raiders. The Raiders have now beaten the Chiefs and taken them to the last minute and making Mahomes go 90 yards to beat them. Watch out for the Raiders. They are really, really good. What have they done since? They got absolutely punked by the Falcons. They barely beat a winless Jets team. They get punked by the Colts, and they lose in a must-win game on Thursday Night Football against Anthony Lynn, who has done everything possible to lose these games. Like, he tried to lose this game 15 different times, and the Raiders wouldn't let him.
One of the things that I realize I don't miss about not having you on as regularly as we have in the past is I can't tell whether or not you're trolling me.
No, I'm being serious. I'm
because
being serious.
Yesterday, let me say this. Yesterday, as Sims and I were stumbling through a preview of the game, I kind of tripped over this idea that, if there was any other coach but John Gruden performing the way that his team has the last 3 years, we'd at least be saying, gee, I wonder if he'll be fired when the season's over. With Gruden, it doesn't even come up.
Yeah, no, it doesn't come up, and it's the way the Raiders have had these last 2 seasons go, where, yes, the defense is flawed, but guess what? John Gruden has a decent say in how the roster is built with Mike Mayock. So that is on his resume as well. But when you have a team that looks like a playoff team for half the season and then completely falls apart in December and January when winning football is played, it's like the old Belichick. Belichick, whenever he says, like, the December after Thanksgiving, that's when real football is played. That's when you find out what your team is. Well, if that's when you find out what your team is, John Gruden has been horrendous as a head coach.
Well, he hasn't won a playoff game since winning Super Bowl 37 18 years ago, and I know he didn't coach for 9 years of that window, but the performance hasn't matched the mystique. There's a little Rex Ryan, or maybe a lot of Rex Ryan in John Gruden. He's good on TV. He talks a good game. He's fun to watch. And it makes Raiders fans, more than anything else, excuse the fact that the results aren't there. They're just so happy that he's the coach, they don't care what the results are. And I feel like Mark Davis, the owner of the team, has the same attitude. He's just thrilled that John Gruden, this cool guy John Gruden, is his head coach, that we're not going to worry about how many games we win. We're not going to worry about spending way too much money on offense, on acquisitions that, for the most part, didn't work, and not spending enough money on the defense. And it's ultimately John Gruden that's controlling that roster. He ran off Reggie McKenzie after 1 year, who did a good job putting together a team that went 12-4 in 2016 and made it to the playoffs. Then after 1 year with Gruden, McKenzie's kicked to the curb. Gruden wants someone in there that basically is going to give Gruden the guys he wants. It's Gruden making those final decisions with Mike Mayock setting the table. And if I'm Mike Mayock, at some point I start looking over my shoulder because it looks like Gruden is in blame someone other than me mode after firing a defensive coordinator on Sunday on a short week, which made no sense. And based on giving up 30 points last night, still makes no sense. I know they had a bunch of guys injured, but other teams say injuries aren't an excuse. Other teams win with guys replacing players who are either on the COVID-19 reserve list or unable to play due to injury, and they perform at a standard that is expected of them. So it just feels like this is what it's going to be, and I don't know what they need to do in this offseason or any offseason to change it, and at some point it may start with the quarterback. I don't know. I'm not sure I can be objective with Derek Carr because I still don't get it, but I know he's had moments, and I was starting to sign on. I was starting to buy in. I mean, they beat the Saints and the Chiefs this year, the top two teams in the league, arguably. The Saints have fallen off after losing, but I don't get it when they lose these other games that they should win.
But that's the thing, Mike, is that John Gruden actually has done a good job with Derek Carr. So he has done a good job in the quarterback position and getting the most out of Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr this year has been playing at or near his ceiling as a quarterback. So that one, you check that mark and you say, okay, John Gruden, you've done that. Everything else is a disaster, and everything else has fallen apart late in the season, 2 years in a row. And you're right. I think it just is what it is. I don't think that John Gruden is going anywhere. I know Mark Davis doesn't want to fire him. I know that it gives the Raiders some type of relevancy in that respect where you have almost a celebrity head coach in John Gruden. And we know John Gruden's good in the meetings. You know he's good talking to the press. So he's always going to have those guys on his side. But if we're sitting here next year, a year from now, and we're having the exact same conversation, no other coach would survive that. And I think John Gruden will.
Well, and part of it is, and we don't know the details of the contract. All we know is 10 years, $100 million. That's what was leaked out there when he took the job 3 years ago. We don't know how much of that's guaranteed. We don't know how it's structured. It's just 10 years, $100 million sounds really good. But at some point in that contract, I believe we get to a juncture where the guaranteed money dissipates. There may not be any at all on the back end. You still have to have an owner that is motivated to move on and then go hire someone else. And Mark Davis is perfectly content and still is, not just content, thrilled that John Gruden is the coach of the team and believes that brighter days are always ahead. And this is where I respect and admire what John Gruden has done. In an industry that is as cutthroat and demanding and results-driven as any in the world, he's found a way to avoid the same degree of scrutiny that applies to everyone else. It's fascinating, and it's great work if you can get it, and he just keeps showing up year after year. And like you said, if we're having this conversation next year, any other coach would be fired or close to it. And for Gruden, it's going to be, well, what are we going to do to try to get a better outcome next year, even though we've got 4 years of spinning our wheels in the mud?
So the theory that I've always prescribed to and that we've talked about on Pardon My Take often is that if you look at them sideways, John Gruden and Mark Davis kind of look like twins. So Mark Davis, John Gruden has figured out the one owner in the NFL where he can get hired, and when that owner looks him in the eyes, the owner is looking at a better version of himself. It's hard to fire a better-looking version of yourself. I think that's what's going on here, Mike.
Interesting theory. I think I've heard that one before from you. And look, when
it makes sense.
This is when you befriend someone that you may have to fire someday, you become less likely to fire them for reasons that you would otherwise fire someone. That's why there needs to be a healthy distance between NFL owner and NFL coach, just like there's a healthy distance between NFL coach and NFL player. It's inevitable. As John Gruden always said, you've either been fired or you're going to be fired. He's the founder of the Fired Football Coaches Association, and that's what makes this so compelling. he's found a way to avoid having to worry about getting fired. And this may be one of the reasons why they're not as good as they need to be. One of the arguments I always made about Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, because there isn't an owner there, a traditional owner, publicly owned team, there isn't that constant fear that on any given day the owner can say, I've had enough until you do better, or unless you do better, I've had enough and you're gone. And I feel like you've taken that element off the table in Las Vegas with John Gruden by having an owner who is not going to fire him, barring a total and complete collapse. And they'd have to be 2-14 for multiple years. And even then, Mark Davis would be weeping on his way to the meeting with John Gruden to tell him it's over. It would be the equivalent of taking, the dog on the last ride to the country. That's what it would be like for Mark Davis. So he's not going to do it, and John Gruden's not going to be scrutinized at the same level anyone else would be. And that's just the way it is. And a lot of Raiders fans are fine with it. I got a lot of hostile emails yesterday that I'd love to be able to read word for word, but every other word would be a bleep. That they're in the personality cult. We're fine with it. John Gruden's the coach. Doesn't matter. The attitude is it doesn't matter if we're winning or losing. We want John Gruden to be our coach.
How much of that do you think is that it's objectively cool to wear Raiders gear? So even when they're bad, like repping the Raiders is a cool thing to do. No, I'm serious. Like those things matter. Like those things play into being okay with bad football year in and year out. If you have a redeeming quality of like, hey, guess what? We're still the silver and black, and it's still the coolest like color scheme in probably the NFL, and you still have the autumn wind as a pirate. All these things, when you add them up, we can take a few years of losing football if we can, wear this hat with pride and have, I guess they don't have Oakland anymore, but this new stadium in Las Vegas and this cool factor.
Depends on what hat you wear. Last night, John Gruden did have Oakland. He said somebody tricked him. Somebody fooled him. He was wearing an Oakland Raiders hat last night before he switched to Las Vegas Raiders. But, there's similarity between the Raiders and the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys haven't been to a conference championship game since 1995. And until this year, they had still managed to have a great following. I mean, this year they get flexed out of prime time for the Browns and the Giants. I think maybe the shine's coming off the star. But for the Raiders, they've got one playoff appearance since the Super Bowl appearance in 2002 when they got shredded by John Gruden. That may be one of the reasons why they're just thrilled to have John Gruden. They experienced those 4 hours on a morning, or on a morning, it is morning, but there go the lights, on a late afternoon. What'd you do? Do you have like the clapper? Do you wave your arms and the lights come on?
No, I'm in the Pardon My Take studio. Yeah, they're motion censored. I guess I wasn't moving enough, so I'll remind myself to move every now and then.
Anyway, the Raiders fans that saw John Gruden and the Buccaneers dismantle a great Raiders team, maybe that memory still resonates. And like this, we want this guy. Like they were seething the whole time. How do we ever let this guy go? If we could only get him back as our head coach. It took 17 years, but they got him back as their head coach. And there's no way they're going to let him go after only 3 years, because what happened the last time he left? He went somewhere else and he beat us in the Super Bowl.
Do you know what it kind of reminds me of, Mike? It reminds me of some of the quote-unquote blue blood college football programs that are kind of holding on to the past and thinking that things will return to how they were. And everyone who's looking around saying like, wait, no, they aren't. Like it's not going back to what it was unless something's, really shifts here. And that's what I think about when I think about the Raiders and the Cowboys. And you're right. Like the history matters to the fans. They can kind of hang their hat on that. And that probably allows for the frustration of losing to be tempered a little bit. If we're just being totally honest, if you can pop in a DVD and watch the 90s, like this happens sometimes. I have friends, or I don't really have friends, but I know people who are Bears friends that just hold on to 1985. I'm not old enough to, I was 1 year old. But there are certain people in different fan bases where they look back to the history and they're like, well, we were at one point the best. It's like, but look at what's happened recently. The last 20 years, you haven't done anything. So can we talk real quick about the other coach in this game?
Sure.
Anthony Lynn has, from my perspective, he is now the funniest coach in the NFL.
Funny how? Funny how? What's
funny
so
how,
funny
like
about him?
Yeah.
Is he a clown?
I think we lost Andy Reid. The when he won a Super Bowl, we lost the jokes we could make about clock management. Anthony Lynn has stepped up to the plate and done a great service to America to be the coach that we can now make fun of when he panics. I've never seen a coach do what he did last night in regulation, where his kicker misses a kick. They get the interception. He then plays for 3 points. When his passing game, did you know that Justin Herbert only had one pass in the last 18 minutes of regulation? It's insane. Their passing game was working all night. He run it 3 times, or they run it twice, and then they have a bad sack. And then he iced his own kicker, Mike. He iced his own kicker. I just froze because I got so upset about that. He iced his own kicker, Mike.
Well, and we've seen that before with Jason Garrett, although I think Jason Garrett had a semi-plausible explanation. Anthony Lynn did not. And that's the thing. When Michael Badgley misses the shorter field goal, not that they should have gone for it on 4th down. It was just a bad circumstance to even set it up that way. You get a gift. It was kind of a fluky throw. Yes, Marcus Mariota threw it behind the receiver. I can't remember who the receiver was. Threw it behind him a little bit, bounced off his hand. Chris Harris Jr. is there to pick it off in stride, and off he goes with it. It completely flips the field in one play at the worst possible time for the Raiders, and there's no killer instinct there. Here's where I have to give Anthony Lynn and the Chargers some credit, though. In overtime, we saw killer instinct. We saw the throws down the field. We saw that we're not going to play for a tie here. We'd rather lose than tie, and the only way to come out of here with a victory is to get the ball down the field. Maybe it was good that the Raiders took the field goal, right? Because then it kept the Chargers from trying to take a field goal.
Mike, we also saw Anthony Lynn try to get his franchise quarterback killed in back-to-back plays where they tried to do a QB sneak, not from the inch line. That was a full yard. That was crazy that he did that 2 times in a row. Justin Herbert fumbles the first time. Almost fumbles the second time. So let's see. There was one big pass play that got him down there, okay?
Well,
they got down there with one big pass. Yeah.
Before that, they did student body right with Justin Herbert trying to run the old Green Bay Jim Taylor sweep.
Yes, exactly. So let's pump the brakes. They got a nice pass interference call to get them, to the 50-yard line, or that might have even been in regulation. But they had one big play
it was in overtime.
Yeah, so they had one big play in overtime, a penalty, and then they tried to get Justin Herbert killed 3 plays in a row, which was stupefying. So I'm gonna push back a little bit and say that he had a great overtime.
The throw from Justin Herbert, maybe that's the punishment for underthrowing it when it could have been the walk-off there. Since you underthrew it, you have to be the one to try to finish off the drive. It's on you, so you're going to run it every time. And it ultimately did work out. And, the holy roller rule that played out was fascinating because those are the 2 teams. And this was way before your time. It was during my time as a kid, the holy roller phenomenon. And we posted a link on our Twitter page to the video of the original holy roller. It's obvious that there was some intentional accidental kicking of the football toward the end zone in the hopes that it would be recovered in the end zone by a Raider. That happened last night, and I was stunned that no one remembered that, number one, it's the holy roller rule, and number 2, it was those 2 teams. And there was that flash of, oh my gosh, the Chargers have won the game in this crazy way. But yeah, you can't recover the fumble farther down the field in that moment. We've known that for years because of the holy roller. But that was a nice little flash of drama right before Justin Herbert got the ball over the top. And for a second there, until they showed the replay, I thought maybe he didn't get the ball in. Maybe the ball came out. Maybe the Raiders recovered it. Maybe the game was over there, but it was clear that he got the ball over the top. The third time he got thrown into a mass of bodies. And I'll agree with you reluctantly. I'm going to be nice. It's been a while since you've been on. The play calling down near the goal line, even though it worked ultimately, it probably wasn't the best way to keep your quarterback healthy going into his first NFL offseason.
Yes. Okay. So 1 point for me already. But I guess that...
And the Chargers do have a history. The Chargers do have a history in late regular season meaningless games getting their quarterback seriously injured before he goes on to become one of the great quarterbacks of all times with the New Orleans Saints.
Yes, right. So this game was not great, but I think the bad coaching made it great in an entertaining way. So I'll thank both Anthony Lynn and John Gruden for that. I know we've been hard on them for the first 20 minutes of the show, but thank you for sending us off with an entertaining game, if not stupefying. If not, there's a level where I love MAC football on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and like when Bowling Green plays Ball State. When I start getting the tweets saying this is a MAC game, that's when you know that it's kind of chaos has reigned supreme and nothing makes sense. And that was what Anthony Lynn and John Gruden were able to accomplish last night.
To me, it was all encapsulated in the moment at the end of regulation when the Raiders send out Daniel Carlson for a 65-yard field goal and they can't work out the snap and the hold. Right?
Yes.
Because you're thinking the whole time, why are they doing this? This isn't going to end well. And I think if I'm a Raiders fan, I'm relieved by the fact that kick didn't actually happen because low trajectory may have been blocked, may have been returned for a touchdown, and then we may not have had overtime. But, I was so just excited to watch another football game after that game on Monday night. And as it was unfolding, I was kind of reluctantly watching. Well, it's on TV. It's my job. It's like I'm really not into this game. But as the game went on, and I think the moment Derek Carr got injured and Marcus Mariota came in and instantly looked good, that's when I got very intrigued by it. Because your first thought is if you lose your starting quarterback unexpectedly, your chances of winning the game plummet. But they invested in Marcus Mariota, $7.5 million this year. He's due to make $10 million next year, and Derek Carr's making $19.5 million. And I don't know. Do the Raiders have a decision to make between the two? If they don't, you're not going to keep Mariota at $10 million. I don't know if you trade him. Maybe you got some trade leverage now because he looks so good. But, and I understand that if he plays week in and week out, he's eventually going to get banged up and he's not going to be as good as he was last night when he was fresh. But if you can keep the guy healthy, he's got the potential to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting that when you go back to that draft class and it's like, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, both of them backups this year, both I would say should be starters. Like I think that they are, if you had to list it, I would make the argument that Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston are somewhere in the top 32 quarterbacks in the world. So it's interesting to see where both these guys will end up and will they get another shot at a starting job. I think Marcus Mariota kind of proved that last night.
Let's hear some of the praise from last night from various Raiders regarding the unexpected performance of Marcus Mariota and the unexpectedly good showing that he had. Here it is.
Marcus came in and did a great job, and really proud of him. I think that just kind of puts an exclamation point on why we signed him, and just wish we could have won the game for him.
He made the defense play honest. The ends couldn't come chase us down like they did last game we played them. They had to play their gaps and play their responsibilities. So he just made them play honest.
I feel like Marcus played great. I feel like the way Marcus comes to practice every day, has a good attitude and plays hard. And I feel like it was no surprise to see him play the way he did tonight.
You're going to go through some ups and downs. And, I think the staff did a great job of kind of keeping me level-headed and kind of fighting through it. And, when it comes down to it, it's still ball. And I just love being out there again. It was fun to play. Unfortunately, we just didn't make enough plays.
It looked like John Gruden had note cards, didn't it? He was like shuffling around note cards, like I like talking points for his postgame. I don't know, Wendy. I never see a coach with notes at a postgame press conference. He's got notes.
He should be used to it, right? I mean, this is essentially last year all over again.
Well,
right?
I don't know what you need. I don't know what you need to have in front of you. Because we've heard it time and again, anytime you ask a question of a coach after a game that he doesn't know the answer to, all you say is, I have to watch the film. I have to watch the film. I have to watch the film. Then that's your easy way out. You don't need notes unless the notes say, I have to watch the film. There's no reason to have the notes. Anyway, it was just kind of strange. But it wasn't strange to see Mariota play well. I was happy for him. And I was rooting for him to win. I was. I mean, we picked the Raiders to win. Sims and I did, and I always want to be right more than anything else. But it was just an entertaining game. It wasn't the best football. It wasn't the best decisions. It wasn't the best clock management, or not clock management, but play selection down near the goal line when the Raiders were in position to get that field goal in overtime. When you look at the circumstance, you have them pinned in. I don't know why you don't go for the touchdown there and end the game and never give them the ball in a position where a touchdown beats you via a kickoff. I'd rather give them the ball pinned in deep on their own end, and maybe I get a short field and I get a walk-off field goal and win the game. So it's easy to say it because it didn't work out, but it just got very uninspired down near the goal line. At least they weren't running the quarterback every play, but it was Josh Jacobs. Right after the announcers put the jinx on him saying, oh, Josh Jacobs wants to end this game, all of a sudden Josh Jacobs can't gain a yard.
Yeah, and anytime you start to get tie vibes that the game is going to end in a tie, it's a pretty good, sign that they both teams kind of stink, and they're both getting in their own way constantly. And there was some big tie vibes going on when the Raiders kicked the field goal, and you're like, maybe is Anthony Lynn? That actually is really what I wanted to find out, Mike. Would Anthony Lynn have kicked a field goal to tie the game instead of trying to win a game as a 4-9 team? Would he have, if they had gotten into field goal range and not touched, if they were not at the goal line, if they were at, let's say, 4th and 12 at the 20-yard line, would he have kicked a field goal instead of trying to win a game that means absolutely nothing, that at this point would actually hurt your team if you think you're going to be the head coach next year?
My first reaction when the Raiders kicked the field goal is they've left just enough time for the Chargers to drive in position for Michael Badgley to miss yet another field goal. So, yes, he would have tried the field goal. They would have missed it, and they would have lost anyway. So I guess under that analysis, throw it to the end zone, try to win the game, because there's no way you're going to rely on your field goal kicker to tie the game, even if your motivation is to get a tie. And since they changed the rule a decade ago that takes away this sudden death walk-off field goal victory, it's only the 4th time that we've had first drive field goal followed by a touchdown. And they're real. One thing I noticed, that clock moves fast in overtime with only 10 minutes. They changed it from 15 to 10 minutes a few years ago when the Buccaneers had to go nearly a full 75 minutes, and then they had a Thursday night game. It was all about removing another argument against short week football. So they said, well, we better make overtime 10 minutes in case somebody's playing on a Sunday that plays on a Thursday. We don't want them to play 75 minutes, and then people are going to argue your guys aren't sufficiently ready to go again. I looked up, first time I noticed the clock in overtime, there were 6 minutes left. It's like, holy crap. Yeah. I mean, this may be the situation we've talked about for a few years where if you play it right, you can drive down and you can get that field goal, and there isn't enough time left for the other team to match it or beat it.
Yeah. No, the Raiders they had to drive like that at the end of the third quarter, the end of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, where they had the ball for about 10 minutes. They did a good job with that, long drives. So college overtime is perfect. College overtime should be adopted by the NFL. Everyone would love that. And 2, the circumstance you just described, the field goal, then touchdown, the total was at 51.5, anywhere from 51.5 to 53. So that touchdown mattered for a lot of people. So that the fact that it only happens has happened 4 times, that's impressive. We've had that twice this week where you have kind of miraculous wins or covers or over-unders. So that's why people are watching late, Mike. That's why people are watching overtime on a game where neither team's going to the playoffs and both coaches stink.
This is why the NFL is looking into expanding the total TV windows, because the betting, the in-game betting, that's going to be revolutionized in fairly short order in the grand scheme of things, where you've got the real-time images coming from the stadiums into your home so you can bet between plays, and the latency issue will be resolved. You have games that you can focus on, and people can focus on, and people can bet on, and they can stay engaged no matter what the score is, no matter what the broader circumstances are. Who cares if one team has no chance of making it to the playoffs? Who cares if both teams have no chance? Here it is on my TV. I've got my phone, and I can have some fun and interact with the game all game long up until the very end.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.